The medical bay of Prometheus Station smelled like antiseptic and recycled air. Mireille sat on the floor next to the recovery pod, her back against the cold metal wall. Inside the pod, a small reptilian creature slept fitfully. His scales were dark green, almost black in some places, and several of them were still growing back where injury had torn them away. "You should go home," Jiwan said from the doorway. He carried a toolbox in one hand and a tired expression on his face. "It's past midnight, station time." Mireille shook her head. "He has nightmares when I'm not here. The monitors pick up his stress levels." Jiwan walked over and sat down beside her. He'd been maintaining the medical equipment for 3 months now, ever since the Veskari cub had arrived. "How's Tresh doing today?" "Better. He ate on his own this morning." Mireille smiled a little. He tried to hide the food he didn't like under his bedding, like a human kid would. The Veskari wouldn't like hearing that comparison. "The Veskari aren't here." Mireille's voice was soft but firm. "And Tresh is a child. No matter what species he belongs to. He needs someone to care about him." Jiwan nodded slowly. He understood. Everyone on the station had heard the story. A border skirmish between Veskari clans had left several dead and one juvenile badly wounded. Human patrol ships had found Tresh floating in an escape pod, barely alive. They'd brought him to Prometheus Station, the nearest medical facility that could handle non-human biology. That was 3 months ago. Since then, Mireille had spent nearly every waking hour with the cub. She'd learned to read his body language, understand his needs, recognize when he was scared or sad, or trying to be brave. The Veskari didn't believe in coddling their young, but Mireille wasn't Veskari. "His clan sent a message," Jiwan said quietly. "They're coming to get him." Mireille's hands tightened in her lap. "When?" 2 days. Maybe less." Inside the pod, Tresh stirred. His eyes opened, large and golden with vertical pupils. When he saw Mireille, his whole body relaxed. He pressed one clawed hand against the inside of the pod's transparent surface. Mireille pressed her hand to the outside, matching his gesture. "It's okay," she whispered. "I'm here." Tresh made a sound, something between a chirp and a growl. It meant comfort in Veskari, one of the few words Mireille had learned. She'd tried to teach him human standard, and he'd picked it up with frightening speed. But he was still young, still learning. "The Veskari won't let you see him once they take him," Jiwan warned. "He's not weak." Mireille's voice was fierce now. "He survived injuries that would have killed an adult. He fought through infections and pain and fear. He's stronger than they know, but he's attached to you, and they'll see that as a problem." Mireille didn't answer. She knew Jiwan was right. The Veskari were warriors, proud and hard. They raised their cubs in isolation, teaching them to rely only on themselves. The fact that Tresh had bonded with a human would be seen as shameful, a sign of corruption. The next 2 days passed too quickly. Mireille tried to prepare Tresh, tried to explain that his family was coming. But how do you explain separation to a child who'd already lost everything once? Hyun-woo came by the medical bay on the morning of the Veskari arrival. He wore his security uniform, looking more formal than usual. "Station Commander Bora wants you to know the Veskari clan leader is demanding immediate custody. No delays, no negotiations. Can't we ask for more time?" Mireille's voice cracked slightly. "He's not fully healed yet. He's not fully healed yet. He's not fully healed. He's not fully healed. Physically, he's fine. You know that." Hyun-woo's expression was sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Mireille, but this is Veskari law. We can't interfere." The Veskari ship docked at Station Port 7. Mireille watched through the viewport as the clan delegation entered the station. They were tall, much taller than humans, with powerful builds and scales that gleamed like armor. At their head walked Commander Vressa, Tresh's aunt and clan matriarch. Vressa's eyes were cold when she looked at Mireille. "You are the human who has kept my nephew." "I'm the doctor who saved his life," Mireille replied, keeping her voice steady, "for which the clan is grateful. But his time here is finished." Bring the cub. Daehyun, the ambassador's aide, stepped forward. Commander Vressa. Perhaps we could arrange a more gradual transition. The cub has been through significant trauma. The cub is Veskari, Vressa interrupted. He will adapt as all Veskari do. Bring him now. Mireille led them to the medical bay. Tresh was awake, sitting in his recovery pod. When he saw the Veskari warriors, his whole body went rigid, his claws extended, digging into his own palms. A gesture Mireille had learned meant extreme distress. Tresh, Vressa said, her voice formal. I am Vressa, sister to your mother. You will come with us now. Tresh looked at Mireille. His golden eyes were wide, pleading. It's okay, Mireille whispered, though her heart was breaking. They're your family. They'll take care of you. No. The word came out broken, barely audible. Vressa's scales bristled. The cub will obey. This weakness is exactly why he must leave this place. 2 Veskari warriors stepped forward. They opened the recovery pod and lifted Tresh out with practiced efficiency. The cub didn't struggle, didn't fight. He'd gone completely still, the way prey animals do when they know they can't escape. But his eyes never left Mireille's face. I need to say goodbye, Mireille said desperately. Please, just let me. The attachment ends now, Vressa stated. It is for his own good. Hyunwoo moved to stand beside Mireille, one hand on her shoulder. Not restraining, just supporting. He knew she wouldn't make a scene. Wouldn't make this harder for Tresh. That wasn't who she was. As the Veskari delegation left with Tresh, Mireille watched through the viewport. The cub looked back once, his small face pressed against the warrior's armor. His claws were still digging into his palms, drawing thin lines of dark blood. Then they were gone. Mireille stood there for a long time, staring at the empty corridor. Jiwon and Hyunwoo stayed with her, neither one speaking. There was nothing to say. That night, Mireille lay in her quarters, unable to sleep. She kept thinking about Tresh's eyes, about the way his whole body had gone rigid with fear. She kept thinking about the blood on his palms, about how badly he'd been hurting and how he hadn't made a sound. The Veskari believed silence was strength. But Mireille knew the truth. Silence was sometimes just another word for suffering. She was still awake when the station intercom crackled to life. The sound was startling in the quiet of night. Static hissed through the speakers, followed by a voice. A small voice, speaking broken human standard. Bring her back. Mireille sat up in bed, her heart pounding. Bring her back. Bring her back. Bring her back. The message repeated, echoing through every corridor, every room, every corner of Prometheus Station. Tresh's voice, filled with a pain so deep, it transcended species and language. Mireille ran to her door, yanked it open. In the hallway, other people were emerging from their quarters, confused and alarmed. The message kept playing, over and over. Bring her back. Hyunwoo appeared, already dressed in his uniform. That's Tresh. How is he accessing the intercom system? I don't know, Mireille whispered. But he's asking for help. He's asking for me. The message didn't stop. It played through the night, through the morning, through the rising panic of the station crew. 3 simple words, repeated endlessly by a child who'd already lost too much and couldn't lose anything more. Bring her back. Bring her back. Bring her back. And somewhere on Prometheus Station, a small Veskari cub sat alone in the dark, his claws on the controls of a system he shouldn't have been able to access, speaking the only words he knew that might make the universe listen. Bring her back. The message had been playing for 6 hours straight. Every speaker on Prometheus Station broadcast the same 3 words in an endless loop. Bring her back. Bring her back. Bring her back. Station Commander Bora stood in the operations center, her jaw tight with frustration. Around her, crew members worked frantically at their consoles, trying to regain control of the communications system. None of them were having any success. Is status report? Bora demanded. Youngmin, the head of station communications, looked up from his screen. His eyes were red from lack of sleep. Commander, we've tried everything. The system is completely locked out. Every override code we enter gets rejected. It's like the system is learning from our attempts and adapting. Adapting? Bora repeated. You're telling me a child has created an adaptive security system? I'm telling you, that's exactly what happened. Youngman pulled up a screen showing lines of code. Look at this. These are defensive protocols that regenerate faster than we can delete them. Someone would need advanced programming knowledge to do this. And not just advanced. Genius level. Jiwan arrived in the operations center, still pulling on his work jacket. He'd been called in from his off-shift sleep. What do you need? Wanting. We need you to shut down that broadcast, Bora said. I have the Veskari threatening military action if we don't fix this immediately. Military action? Jiwan moved to an empty console and started typing. Over a kid asking for help? They see it differently. To them, this is a public display of weakness. The entire station is hearing their cub cry out for a human. They're humiliated. Ender. Jiwan pulled up the system architecture. His eyes widened as he scanned through the layers of security. This is incredible. He's bypassed 7 different protocols. He's using 3 different programming languages. Some of these are human-specific codes that shouldn't work with Veskari neural patterns. Can you stop it? Bora asked. I don't know. Give me time. But time was something they didn't have. In the Veskari guest quarters, Commander Vressa paced like a caged predator. Her warriors stood at attention, waiting for orders. The message echoed through their rooms too. Impossible to escape. Bring her back. Bring her back. One of her warriors spoke carefully. Commander, the cub's behavior is unprecedented. Perhaps the human contamination runs deeper than we thought. Vressa's scales bristled with anger. My nephew is not contaminated. He is confused and frightened. Once we return him to proper Veskari structure, he will remember his strength. With respect, Commander, he has shown no strength, only this weakness. Vressa spun to face her warrior. You dare question my judgment? The warrior bowed his head immediately. Never, Commander. I merely observe what we all hear. What they heard was a child in pain. Vressa knew it, even if she couldn't admit it. She'd seen the way Tresh had looked at the human female, the way his whole body had relaxed in her presence. She'd seen the blood on his palms from his claws, the silent suffering he'd endured rather than show emotion. That was good, she told herself. That was Veskari's strength. But this public crying out, this was not strength. This was something else entirely. Hyunwoo found Mirai in her quarters. She was sitting on her bed, listening to Tresh's voice echo through the walls. Tears ran down her face. But she wasn't sobbing. She just sat there, letting them fall. I can't reach him, she said when Hyunwoo entered. They won't let me near the Veskari quarters. Daehyun has me confined here for diplomatic sensitivity. The whole station is going crazy, Hyunwoo told her. People can't sleep. They can't work. Some of them are getting angry at the Veskari for making a kid this desperate. It's not the Veskari's fault. Not really. Mirai wiped her eyes. They're doing what they think is right. They believe emotional distance makes their young strong. How do you argue with an entire culture's way of raising children? By pointing out when it's clearly not working. Hyunwoo sat down beside her. Mirai. That kid broke into the most secure communication system on this station. He taught himself human programming languages just by watching you work. He's been planning this since he arrived. Hasn't he? Climb. Mirai thought back over the past 3 months. Tresh, watching her input door codes. Tresh, listening when she spoke to other staff members. Tresh's eyes following her hands when she typed reports on her console. He was always learning. She whispered. I thought he was just curious. I didn't realize he was memorizing everything. The Veskari think their cubs are slow learners. They don't expect independence until maturity. But Tresh isn't slow. He's brilliant. He just needed something worth learning for. On the view screen in the operations center, Youngmin pulled up security footage. Bora watched as the recordings showed Tresh's escape from the Veskari quarters. The cub had waited until the warriors were in their meditation cycle, a time when they went into a deep trance-like state. Then he'd simply walked out, but his path through the station showed incredible intelligence. He'd avoided every security checkpoint. He'd moved through maintenance shafts that no adult Veskari could fit through. He'd navigated a route that suggested he understood the station's entire layout, even though he'd spent all his time in the medical bay. How did he know where to go? Bora wondered aloud. Jiwon, watching the same footage, understood. Mireille probably talked to him about the station, mentioned places, described layouts. She wouldn't have thought anything of it, just conversation to keep a lonely kid company. And he remembered all of it, Youngmin added. Built a mental map. The trail led to an emergency communications hub in the station's central core. It was a backup system, rarely used. Designed for crisis situations when main communications failed. Tresh had chosen it because it had direct access to every speaker on the station and fewer security protocols than the main systems. When Hyunwoo's security team reached the hub, they found the door sealed. Emergency lockdown procedures had been activated from inside. Through the reinforced door, they could hear the broadcast, but they could also hear something else. Crying. Not the words on the broadcast. Real crying. The sound of a child sobbing. Hyunwoo pressed his hand against the door. Tresh? The crying continued, but the broadcast didn't change. Bring her back. Bring her back. Tresh, my name is Hyunwoo. I'm Mireille's friend. She's safe. She wants to talk to you. For a moment, the crying quieted. Then, a small voice, different from the broadcast, spoke from the other side of the door. Where is she? She's in her quarters. The Veskari won't let her come here. Make them. The voice was desperate, breaking. Please make them. Hyunwoo looked at his security team. They were all human, all familiar with the sound of a child in distress. Species didn't matter. This was a kid who needed help. We're trying, Hyunwoo promised. But I need you to help us too. Can you open the door? No. Not until she comes. Bring her back. Commander Vressa arrived at the communications hub 30 minutes later. She moved through the station with her warriors, ignoring the stares of human crew members. When she reached Hyunwoo, her expression was carved from stone. This ends now, she stated. You will breach that door and retrieve my nephew. With respect, Commander, that would traumatize him further, Hyunwoo replied. He's already suffering. Veskari do not suffer. They endure. Then why is he crying? Vressa's scales flattened against her body, a sign of shock. That is not possible. Veskari cubs cannot cry until they reach maturity. Their tear ducts do not function. Come listen for yourself. Vressa approached the door. For a moment, she stood silent. Then, she heard it. The sound of her nephew sobbing on the other side of reinforced metal. Her entire body went rigid. This is what the human has done to him, she said. But her voice lacked conviction. This weakness, or maybe, Hyunwoo said quietly, this is what happens when someone learns they're allowed to feel. Inside the communications hub, Tresh sat on the floor with his arms wrapped around his knees. His claws had torn through his own scales in places. His throat hurt from crying, from speaking the same words over and over into the broadcast system. He understood what he'd done. He'd accessed the station's communications. He'd locked everyone else out. He'd made the entire station listen to what he needed. The Veskari way would be to endure in silence, to be strong, to never show weakness. But Mireille had taught him something different. She'd taught him that asking for help wasn't weakness. that admitting you were scared or hurt or lonely was actually brave. So he asked. He asked the only way he knew how. Bring her back. And somewhere on the other side of the station, Mireille heard his voice and knew that she would move every star in the galaxy to reach him if she had to. The message played on. Bring her back. Bring her back. Bring her back. Kyung-soo arrived on Prometheus Station 18 hours after the broadcast began. He was a xenopsychologist, someone who studied how different alien species thought and felt. Station Commander Bora had called him in because nobody else knew what to do. He stood in the operations center, listening to the same 3 words that had been playing for almost a full day. Bring her back. Bring her back. Bring her back. Tell me about the cub, Kyung-soo said to Bora. His name is Tresh. Veskari juvenile, approximately 8 years old by their standards. Found injured in an escape pod after a clan battle. Dr. Mireille has been his primary caretaker for 3 months. And the Veskari took him back? 2 days ago, he escaped their quarters last night and did this. Bora gestured at the speakers, still broadcasting Tresh's message. Kyung-soo closed his eyes, thinking. The Veskari raise their cubs in isolation. Minimal physical contact. Minimal emotional engagement. They believe it creates warriors who can function independently in any situation. Does it work? Bora asked. Define work. It creates functional warriors, yes. But there's been very little study on the psychological cost. The Veskari don't share their data on cub development. Salmon entered the operations center. She was a junior engineer who'd worked in the medical bay, helping Mireille with equipment maintenance. She carried a tablet full of notes. Commander, I've been reviewing the security footage from Tresh's time in medical. I think you need to see this. She pulled up dozens of video clips. Each one showed Tresh doing something small. Watching Mireille type in door codes. Listening to her explain station layouts to visitors. Staring at her hands when she worked on consoles. Organizing medical supplies in neat rows because he'd noticed Mireille liked organization. He wasn't just recovering, Salmon explained. He was studying. Everything Mireille did, everywhere she went, everything she talked about. He absorbed it all. Jiwon nodded. That's how he knew where the emergency communications hub was. That's how he accessed the systems. Mireille probably mentioned it once in passing. And he remembered. Veskari cubs aren't supposed to be capable of this kind of learning, Kyung-soo said slowly. At least, that's what the Veskari claim. They say their young are intellectually immature until they undergo warrior trials. Then they're wrong. Jiwon stated. Because Tresh is smarter than most adult engineers I know. Kyung-soo sat down, his mind working through the implications. What if the Veskari are wrong about everything? What if their cubs aren't slow learners, but suppressed learners? What if isolation doesn't create strength, but simply teaches children to hide their capabilities? Why would they hide? Bora asked. Because showing intelligence, showing emotion, showing need, all of those things are punished in Veskari culture. So the cubs learn to be silent, to be still, to show nothing. Until they can't anymore. Salmon finished quietly. Kyung-soo stood up. I need to speak with Commander Vressa. And I need to speak with Dr. Mireille. They found Mireille still in her quarters. She looked exhausted, her eyes red from crying. Tresh's voice still echoed through her walls, a constant reminder of his pain. Dr. Mireille. Kyung-soo introduced himself. I need to understand Tresh's psychological state. What was he like during his recovery? 1. Mireille took a shaky breath. Scared at first. In pain. But he was also curious. He wanted to understand everything around him. I thought I was just keeping him company, talking to fill the silence. But he was listening to every word. Did he show emotion? All the time. He tried to hide it at first, but after a while, he stopped pretending. When he was happy, his scales would brighten. When he was sad, They'd darken. When he was scared, his claws would extend. Mirai's voice broke. He dug his claws into his own palms when the Veskari took him. He was terrified, but he didn't make a sound. That's what they expect from him. But he's making sounds now, Kyung-soo observed. He's crying. He's asking for help. Why now? Because he learned it was okay. Mirai looked at the psychologist. I taught him that feeling things didn't make him weak. That asking for what you need is brave. I taught him wrong, didn't I? For a Veskari? Reporter. For a Veskari? No, Kyung-soo said firmly. You taught him to be healthy. The question is whether his species will let him be. Commander Vressa stood outside the communications hub, listening to her nephew's broadcast. She'd been there for hours, unable to leave, unable to look away from her own failure, because that's what this was. A failure. She'd told herself she was rescuing Tresh from human weakness. She'd told herself that removing him from Mirai's influence was the right thing to do. She'd told herself that Veskari's strength would heal whatever damage the humans had done. But Veskari's strength hadn't healed anything. It had broken something instead. Kyung-soo approached her carefully. Commander Vressa, may I speak with you? Vressa turned to face him. You are the human mind healer. Xeno-psychologist. Yes. You want to tell me that my nephew is damaged, that I have failed him. I want to tell you the truth, Kyung-soo replied. Tresh isn't damaged, but he is suffering. Suffering is part of growth. Not like this. Kyung-soo pulled up a screen on his tablet, showing data on child development across multiple species. Commander. Every species in the coalition has studied how their young develop, and every single one has found the same thing. Children need attachment. They need to feel safe with someone. Without it, they develop psychological problems that last their entire lives. Veskari cubs are raised in isolation. It is our way. And how many of your warriors struggle with forming connections as adults? How many have difficulty trusting their clanmates? How many die alone because they never learned how to let anyone close? Competer. 2. Vressa was silent. She couldn't answer those questions, but she knew the answers. Every Veskari knew the answers. They just never spoke about them. Tresh had something rare. Kyung-soo continued gently. He had someone who made him feel safe, and when you took that away without warning, without preparation, you recreated the exact trauma that injured him in the first place. Sudden loss, sudden separation, sudden loneliness. His mother died in the battle that injured him, Vressa admitted quietly. He saw it happen. Then he's already experienced devastating loss once, and you've made him experience it again. Inside the communications hub, Tresh's voice was getting weaker. He'd been speaking for so long, repeating the same message over and over. His throat hurt, his body hurt, his heart hurt. But he couldn't stop, because stopping meant accepting that she wasn't coming back. And he couldn't accept that. Bring her back, he whispered into the microphone. Please, bring her back. Bora called an emergency meeting. She brought together Kyung-soo, Daehyun, Hyun-woo, Ji-won, Mirai, and Commander Vressa. They gathered in a conference room while Tresh's message continued to play overhead. This situation is destroying station operations, Bora stated. But more importantly, it's destroying a child. We need a solution. The solution is simple, Daehyun said. Return the cub to Dr. Mirai. Unacceptable, Vressa replied immediately. He must learn Veskari ways. He's learning them right now, Hyun-woo pointed out. He's learning that asking for what you need gets you nothing. He's learning that caring about someone means losing them. He's learning that emotions are something to be punished for. He's learning to be Veskari. No, Kyung-soo interrupted. He's learning to be traumatized. Commander, I've reviewed hours of footage of Tresh with Dr. Mirai. He was thriving. He was learning. And he was growing stronger, not weaker. The attachment he formed didn't damage him. It saved him. Vressa stood up, her scales bristling. You are human. You cannot understand our ways. I understand child development, and I understand that what you're doing to Tresh will cause permanent psychological harm. In your culture, maybe that's acceptable. But by every other species' standards, it's abuse. The word hung in the air like a blade, Vressa's claws extended. For a moment, she looked ready to strike. Then her shoulders sagged, just slightly. What would you have me do? Allow him to stay with the human? Abandon our ways entirely? What? I would have you consider, Kyungsu said carefully, that maybe some of your ways need to change. Mireille stood up. Her voice was quiet, but steady. I don't want to change Veskari culture. I just want Tresh to be okay. If there's a way to do that within your traditions, I'll support it. But if there isn't, then maybe your traditions need to be questioned. You speak boldly for someone who has no clan, Vressa observed. Maybe that's the problem, Mireille replied. Maybe you see clan membership as the only thing that matters. But Tresh doesn't care about clans right now. He cares about being safe, about being heard, about knowing that someone cares if he's scared, or hurt, or alone. Bora leaned forward. Commander Vressa, I'm going to speak plainly. We have two options. We can force our way into that communications hub and drag Tresh out. It will traumatize him further, and based on his current state, might actually kill him from stress. Or we can let Dr. Mireille talk to him, calm him down, and then find a long-term solution that works for everyone. And if I refuse both options, then I will consider this a hostage situation, and I will act accordingly. Bora's voice was hard as steel. That cub is a child in distress on my station. I have a responsibility to protect him, regardless of politics. The room fell silent. Tresh's voice continued from the speakers, weaker now, almost inaudible. Bring her back. Vressa closed her eyes. She thought of her sister, Tresh's mother. She thought of the warrior her sister had been, strong and proud and alone. She thought of how her sister had died in battle, with no one holding her hand, no one speaking words of comfort. She thought of Tresh, locked in a communications hub, begging for the one person who made him feel less alone. And she made a decision that would change everything. Let the human speak to him, Vressa said quietly. Let Dr. Mireille end this. Mireille walked through the corridors of Prometheus Station, with Hyunwoo beside her. Behind them, at a careful distance, Commander Vressa and two of her warriors followed. The broadcast was still playing, but Tresh's voice had gotten so quiet that the speakers could barely pick it up. Bring her back. The message whispered through the station. Bring her back. When they reached the communications hub, Mireille placed her hand on the cold metal door. Her heart was pounding. She could hear Tresh on the other side, crying softly between repetitions of his message. Tresh, she called out. It's me. It's Mireille. It's... The broadcast stopped. The sudden silence was almost shocking after so many hours of the same message. Everyone in the corridor held their breath. Waiting. Mireille? Tresh's voice came through the door, small and broken. Is it really you? It's really me. I'm right here. You left. The words were filled with so much pain that Mireille felt tears spring to her eyes. You left me. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to stay with you. But your family came, and I thought they would take care of you. They are not family. Tresh's voice was fierce now, despite its smallness. You are family. Family does not leave. Vressa, standing behind Mireille, made a sound like she'd been struck. Her scales rippled with some emotion that humans couldn't read. Tresh, I'm here now, Mireille said gently. Can you open the door? Please? Will you leave again? Mireille looked back at Vressa. The Veskari commander's expression was unreadable. No promises had been made about what would happen after this. No agreements had been reached. But Mireille couldn't lie to Tresh. Not now. I don't know what happens next, she admitted. But right now, I'm here. And I want to see you. I want to make sure You're okay. There was a long silence. Then the door lock clicked open. Jiwon had created a manual override that would only work if Tresh agreed to unlock the door from inside. It was a way of giving the cub control, of letting him choose. And he had chosen to let Mirai in. The door slid open. Mirai stepped inside. The communications hub was small and dark. Tresh sat in the corner, his body curled into a tight ball. His scales were dull, almost gray. His claws had torn through his own skin in multiple places, leaving dried blood on his hands and arms. He looked so small, so fragile. Nothing like the fierce warriors of his species. Mirai knelt down slowly, making herself less threatening. "Oh, Tresh," she whispered. "Look at you." Tresh didn't move. He just stared at her with those golden eyes. Like he couldn't quite believe she was real. "I'm here," Mirai said softly. "I'm really here." Then Tresh moved. He launched himself across the small space and crashed into Mirai's arms. Wrapping his claws around her and holding on like he was drowning and she was the only solid thing in the universe. Mirai held him tight. She felt his whole body shaking, heard the sounds he made, somewhere between crying and keening, felt his claws digging into her back, not enough to hurt but enough to anchor himself to her. "It's okay," she murmured. "I've got you." "Don't leave," Tresh begged against her shoulder. "Please don't leave again. Please. I'm not going anywhere right now. Right now, I'm right here with you." From the doorway, Vressa watched. She'd never seen a Veskari cub behave like this. Never seen one show such raw emotion, such desperate need. In her culture, this would be seen as the ultimate weakness. But looking at her nephew now, clinging to the human who'd shown him kindness, Vressa couldn't see weakness. She saw pain. She saw a child who'd lost his mother, been torn from the only person who made him feel safe, and fought with everything he had to get her back. That wasn't weakness. That was strength, of a different kind. Hyunwoo spoke quietly to Vressa. "Your nephew is brilliant. He broke through security systems that military programmers couldn't crack. He navigated a space station he'd never fully seen. He found a way to make everyone listen. That's not the behavior of a weak or damaged cub." "No," Vressa agreed slowly. "It is not." Inside the hub, Mirai gently examined Tresh's wounds. The self-inflicted cuts from his claws were shallow but numerous. "We need to get you to medical," she said. "These need to be cleaned and treated." "No." Tresh's grip on her tightened. "They'll take me away again. I won't let them take you away right now. I promise. Humans keep promises? This human does." Tresh loosened his hold just slightly. He looked up at Mirai's face, searching for something. "Why did you come back?" "Because you asked me to. Because you needed me." Mirai wiped a tear from her own cheek. "Because I care about you." "Tresh. Very much. The others say caring is weakness. The others are wrong." Vressa stepped into the communications hub. Tresh immediately tensed, his claws extending again. But Mirai kept her arms around him, keeping him steady. "Tresh," Vressa said, her voice gentler than before. "I am your aunt. I am your clan. You hurt me," Tresh replied, his voice shaking. "You took me away from her. I believed I was helping you. I was wrong." The admission seemed to cost Vressa something. Her warriors, standing outside the hub, shifted uncomfortably. Veskari commanders did not admit mistakes, especially not to cubs. "The human has taught you to show emotion," Vressa continued. "I called this weakness. But you have shown great strength in finding her again. You used intelligence and determination. These are warrior qualities." Ending quote. "I don't want to be a warrior," Tresh said quietly. "And where do you feel safe?" Tresh pressed closer to Mirai. The answer was obvious without words. Vressa was quiet for a long moment. Then she spoke again. "There is an old Veskari tradition. Korthas. The warrior's debt. When someone saves a warrior's life, That warrior owes an obligation that cannot be dismissed. I am familiar with Korthos, Daehyun said from the doorway. The ambassador's aide had been listening carefully. Now, Dr. Mireille saved my nephew's life, Vressa stated. Therefore, by Veskari law, an obligation exists. I propose that Dr. Mireille be appointed as Tresh's Korra. Everyone stared at her. Jiwon leaned over to whisper to Hyunwoo. What's a Korra? Lutter. 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 Daehyun answered for everyone. A Korra is a guardian mentor. Someone who guides a young Veskari's development. It's usually a clan elder. Someone of great honor and skill. An outsider has never been named Korra, Vressa added. But the law does not forbid it. And it is the only way I see to honor both the debt we owe Dr. Mireille and my nephew's clear need for her presence. What would this mean? Mireille asked carefully. It would mean you join our clan delegation. You would travel with us, live among us, be subject to our laws and customs. In return, you would have full authority over Tresh's care and education. No one could separate you from him without your agreement. Mireille looked down at Tresh, still holding on to her. His eyes were wide, hopeful for the first time since the Veskari had arrived. But I'm not Veskari, Mireille said. I don't know your customs. I don't understand your ways. You understand what my nephew needs, Vressa replied. That is more important than understanding traditions. You can learn our ways. He needs you now. It would mean leaving the station, Bora pointed out. Leaving your post. Possibly for years. Mireille thought about her life on Prometheus Station. Her job, her quarters, her routine, her friends. Everything familiar and safe. Then she thought about Tresh. Asking for her in the only way he knew how. Bring her back. 3 simple words that had changed everything. If I agree, Mireille said slowly. I have conditions. Tresh gets to show emotions without punishment. He gets to ask questions. He gets to be a child. Not just a warrior in training. Agreed, Vressa said. And if at any point I believe his well-being is being compromised, I have the right to advocate for him, to argue with you, to question your decisions. Vressa's scales bristled slightly at this, but she nodded. The role of Korra includes advocacy. I will honor that. Then I agree. Tresh looked up at her, his eyes shining. You're staying? With me? I'm staying with you. Promise? Promise. Tresh buried his face against Mireille's shoulder. His whole body relaxed for the first time in days. The tension that had been holding him together finally broke, and he simply let himself be held. Hyunwoo smiled from the doorway. Well, that's the most diplomatic hostage negotiation I've ever seen. Jiwon laughed quietly. Only Mireille could accidentally become part of an alien warrior clan by being too caring. Kyung-soo stepped forward. Commander Vressa, if I may offer some guidance, Dr. Mireille will need support in her new role. Perhaps I could provide materials on Veskari child development, what we know of it, and I would recommend regular check-ins to ensure Tresh's psychological health. That would be acceptable, Vressa agreed. In the communications hub, Mireille gently stood up, still holding Tresh. The cub wrapped his arms and legs around her, clinging like he'd never let go. She carried him out into the corridor where crew members had gathered, drawn by the silence after so many hours of broadcast. They stared at the sight. A human woman, holding a Veskari cub like he was precious. A Veskari commander standing beside them, looking almost peaceful. A crisis resolved not by force or negotiation, but by simple compassion. Someone started clapping. Then another person joined in. Soon the entire corridor was applauding. Tresh lifted his head from Mireille's shoulder. Why are they doing that? Because you were very brave, Mireille told him. You asked for help when you needed it. That takes courage. The Veskari way is to be silent. Maybe. But sometimes the bravest thing you can do is make noise. As they walked toward the medical bay, Tresh's wound still needing treatment, the cub spoke again. Mireille? Yes? Thank you for coming back. Thank you for calling for me. Behind them, Vressa walked with her warriors. She was thinking about her sister, about Veskari traditions, about what strength really meant. She was thinking about how a small cub had brought an entire station to its knees with nothing but 3 words and the courage to say them out loud. Maybe, she thought, there were kinds of strength her people had forgotten about, and maybe it was time to remember them. 3 days later, Mireille stood in her quarters on Prometheus Station, packing her belongings into storage containers. It felt strange, dismantling a life she'd built over years. But every time doubt crept in, she thought of Tresh, and the choice became easy again. Jiwon leaned against the doorframe, watching her work. "You're really doing this." "I really am. The Veskari ship leaves tomorrow. You'll be gone for at least 2 years. Maybe longer." "I know." Mireille folded a shirt carefully. "But Tresh needs stability. He needs to know I'm not going to disappear on him again. He's not your child." "No. But he's my responsibility now. I accepted the role of Korra." "That means something." Hyunwoo arrived with a box of medical supplies he'd requisitioned for her. Vressa approved these. She said, "You'll need them to treat Tresh if he gets injured during training." "Training?" Mireille looked up sharply. "He's 8 years old. Veskari cubs start warrior training at 5. She's already delayed it because of his injuries." Hyunwoo set the box down. "But she promised to let you oversee it. Make sure it's age-appropriate." Mireille sighed. "I'm going to be arguing with a Veskari commander about proper child development. This should be interesting." Mireille sighed. "People. This should be interesting." Salman knocked on the open door, carrying a small device. "I made you something. It's a translator, with updated Veskari language files. It'll help you communicate better with the clan." "Thank you." Mireille took the device gratefully. "That's thoughtful. Also, I loaded it with human children's stories, translated into Veskari. I thought maybe Tresh would like them." Mireille smiled. "He'll love them. He's been asking me to tell him stories every night." In the Veskari quarters, Tresh was preparing for departure too. But unlike Mireille, he was excited. He kept asking Vressa when they would leave, when Mireille would come to their ship, if his room would be near hers. Vressa watched her nephew with mixed feelings. He was more animated than she'd ever seen him. More expressive. More openly emotional. Everything a Veskari cub shouldn't be. And yet, he was also calmer. More settled. The desperate edge that had driven him to seize the intercom system was gone. He was eating properly again. Sleeping through the night. Healing. In ways that had nothing to do with physical wounds. One of her warriors approached carefully. "Commander, some of the clan are concerned. The humans' influence grows stronger. Perhaps we should reconsider this arrangement." "The decision is made," Vressa replied. "Tresh is Korra bonded now. To break that bond would dishonor our laws. But she is teaching him to be weak, is she?" Vressa turned to face her warrior. He learned to access systems that baffled our technicians. He navigated a space station using only verbal descriptions and memory. He found a way to communicate across an entire facility. "Are these the actions of a weak cub?" The warrior hesitated. "No, Commander. But his emotions are natural," Vressa interrupted. "I have been thinking much these past days. We pride ourselves on Veskari's strength. But what if we have mistaken silence for strength? What if we have been teaching our young to hide rather than to overcome?" The warrior looked shocked. Such thoughts were nearly heretical in Veskari culture. "Do not speak of this to others," Vressa warned. "I must think more on it. But watch Tresh as he grows. We may learn something from this human's methods." On the last night before departure, Station Commander Bora hosted a small gathering in the observation lounge. It wasn't a formal event, just a chance for Mireille to say goodbye to the people she'd worked with. Daehyun raised a glass. "To Dr. Mireille, who accidentally became a Veskari clan member by being stubborn and caring in equal measure." Everyone laughed and drank. Even Vressa, who had been invited and surprisingly accepted, managed something that might have been a smile. Kyungsoo approached Mireille with a datapad. I've compiled everything I could find on Veskari psychology and child development. It's not much. They're very secretive, but it might help. Thank you for everything. Mireille took the pad. You helped me understand what Tresh needed. You already knew, Kyungsoo replied. You just needed someone to confirm you weren't crazy for caring so much. Tresh was there too, staying close to Mireille's side. He was still getting used to being around so many people, but he was trying. Hyunwoo had taught him a human handshake, which the cub practiced with grave seriousness on anyone who came near. You take care of her, Hyunwoo told Tresh. She's going to a strange place to be with you. That makes her brave. I will protect her, Tresh promised solemnly. Even though I am small, sometimes the smallest guards are the fiercest. As the evening wore on, people shared stories about working with Mireille, her dedication to her patients, her kindness even when exhausted, her tendency to bring injured people food because she thought it helped healing. Jiwon told the story of Tresh bringing Mireille tangled wires, trying to fix things for her. He learned caregiving from watching you, Jiwon said. You didn't just save his life. You taught him how to care about someone else. Mireille felt tears prickling her eyes. I'm going to miss all of you. We'll miss you too, Bora said. But you're doing something important. You're building a bridge between two species. That matters. The next morning, Mireille carried her packed belongings to the Veskari ship. It was massive, built for war, but adapted for long-term living. The corridors were wider than human ships, the ceilings higher. Everything scaled for beings larger than herself. Her quarters were near Tresh's room. As promised, they were sparse but functional. A sleeping platform, storage units, a small desk. The walls were bare metal, cold, and impersonal. Tresh appeared in her doorway, carrying something. I made this for you. It was a piece of fabric with a design drawn on it in careful strokes. The design showed two figures, one tall and scaled, one smaller and smooth-skinned. They were holding hands. It's us, Tresh explained. Family. Mireille hung the fabric on her wall immediately. Are you scared? Tresh asked. Of living with Veskari? A little, Mireille admitted. Are you scared of anything? Sometimes, but less when you're here. They explored the ship together over the next few hours. Tresh showed her the training rooms, the meal halls, the observation decks. Other Veskari watched them with curiosity and suspicion, but none challenged their presence. When they passed through the medical bay, Mireille examined the equipment. It was different from human technology, but the principles were similar. She could work with this. The ship's medical officer, a tall Veskari named Keth, approached. You are the human Cora. I'm Dr. Mireille. I specialize in xenobiology and trauma care. Tresh's injuries were severe when you received him. Yes, but he's strong. He healed well. Keth looked at Tresh, who stood close to Mireille's side. He is different now. Changed. He's healing in other ways too, Mireille said carefully. The others say you have made him weak. But I see no weakness. I see a cub who fought to reclaim what he needed. That is warrior spirit. Is it not? Mireille smiled slightly. I think so. As the ship prepared to depart Prometheus Station, Mireille stood at an observation window with Tresh. The station grew smaller as they pulled away, all the familiar lights and corridors becoming distant points in the darkness. Are you sad? Tresh asked. A little. But also happy. Mireille put her hand on his shoulder. Because I'm with you. Will you teach me more human things? If you teach me Veskari things, we'll learn from each other. Tresh considered this. The others say humans are weak. But you are not weak. You left your home for me. Sometimes love looks like weakness to people who don't understand it. But really, it's the strongest thing there is. Months passed. Life on the Veskari ship was difficult at first. The culture was strict, the expectations harsh. Mireille had to learn quickly how to navigate a society built on honor and combat prowess. But she had Tresh, and Tresh had her. They supported each other through the adjustments. She taught him to read human languages. He taught her Veskari combat signs. She explained human emotions and psychology. He showed her how to move properly in the higher gravity the Veskari preferred. The other cubs began to notice Tresh. He was different from them, more expressive, more curious. At first, they mocked him for it. But Tresh had learned something on Prometheus Station. He'd learned that being different wasn't something to hide. When older cubs challenged him during training, Tresh held his own. He used techniques Mireille had taught him, combining Veskari's strength with human adaptability. He wasn't the strongest or the fastest, but he was smart. He found ways to win that other cubs didn't expect. Slowly, grudgingly, he earned respect. And more importantly, he earned questions. Other cubs started asking Tresh about the human, about her strange ways, about why he seemed so much calmer than they felt. Tresh told them about Mireille's lessons, about how it was okay to admit fear, about how asking for help was brave, about how caring for others made you stronger, not weaker. Some cubs dismissed him, but others listened. Vressa watched all of this with careful attention. She saw how her nephew thrived under Mireille's guidance. She saw how other cubs responded to his different approach. She saw possibilities she'd never considered before. One evening, she found Mireille in the medical bay, updating records. "Dr. Mireille, may I speak with you?" "Of course, Commander." Vressa sat down, an unusual gesture. Veskari rarely sat in informal situations. "I have been watching Tresh's progress, and I find myself questioning many things I believed about raising Veskari young. 1. What kinds of things? We teach our cubs that emotion is weakness, that attachment is vulnerability, that independence must be forged through isolation. But Tresh shows me that emotions can fuel strength, that attachment can provide foundation, that isolation can damage rather than strengthen." "What are you saying?" Mireille asked carefully. "I am saying that perhaps humans understand something about child development that Veskari have forgotten, or never knew." Vressa looked directly at Mireille. "I am saying that I want to learn from you, not just for Tresh, but for other cubs, for future generations." Mireille felt her breath catch. "Yes, and it will not be easy. Many in my clan will resist, but I am commander, and I say we must change, or we will continue to produce warriors who are strong in body, but broken in spirit. I'll help however I can," Mireille promised. "I know you will. That is why you are here." B. Years passed. Tresh grew taller, his scales darkening to adult colors. He completed his warrior trials, becoming the first Veskari to do so, while openly acknowledging emotional bonds. He didn't hide his attachment to Mireille. Instead, he spoke of it as his foundation, his strength. Other young Veskari noticed. Some followed his example. Mireille eventually returned to Prometheus Station, but not permanently. She became a liaison, traveling between human and Veskari space, teaching both species about each other. She trained Veskari medical officers in psychological care. She explained to humans that Veskari weren't emotionless, just suppressed. She carried a clan mark on her shoulder now, the symbol for Korra, the one who stays. Youngman found her on the station one day and asked about her work. "Do you regret it? Leaving your life here?" Mireille thought about that night when Tresh's voice had echoed through every speaker. "Bring her back. Bring her back." "No," she said simply. "He needed someone to stay, so I stayed. That's what family does." In the station's historical database, G1 had updated the records. The incident had many names now. The Tresh incident, the intercom crisis, the Korra bonding. But among the humans who'd been there, it was remembered as something simpler. The day a child asked for help and an entire species learned to listen. And deep in the database, preserved in 17 languages, was the audio file that had changed everything. Just 3 words, spoken in a child's voice. Bring her back. 3 words that proved love could bridge any distance, cross any species barrier, overcome any cultural divide. 3 words that showed the galaxy that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is admit you need someone. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is answer that call. Mireille had answered. She'd crossed into an alien culture, adapted to a foreign way of life, and stayed when staying was hard. Because that's what family does. And in doing so, she'd taught both humans and Veskari that compassion wasn't weakness. It was the strongest force in the universe.